All right, let's see. All right, I'll keep an eye on people joining. I'll pull up my screen share. I'm going to do just a really brief intro. A lot of you are already super familiar with HEC and the work that we do. But I wanted to, oh, there we got another person coming in. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to do a really quick overview of HEC, but I'm not going to take very long at all because, like I said, I think most of you are already pretty familiar with our work. Okay, I'm going to minimize that. Okay, so, oh, here we go. Oh, we got chat going on. Awesome. Thank you for adding in all of your names and saying hey. Okay, so as I've already said to those of you who have been on for a few, all participants are automatically muted. That's just to kind of cut down on feedback. So you can add questions and comments in the chat box. And then I will share these slides through our Facebook event and on our webpage. So if you need those later on, you can easily reference them. No reason to take copious notes right now. There will not be a quiz at the end, unless Paula plans on one.
No quizzes.
So yeah, so we will try and make it as easy and pain-free as possible. If I can get through. There we go. Okay, so welcome to HEC Environmental Advocates Training. If you aren't familiar with HEC, I just decided to throw our mission up here really quickly. We've been around for about 37 years now, and we really focus a lot on policy issues in Indiana that deal with the environment and public health. But we really do a wide range of work, which will become pretty apparent to you today as we talk about our environmental justice initiatives. So we do education, so that would be in the form of things like this, where we do trainings, either geared towards our volunteers directly, or even to communities at large, where we talk about issues that might be a little more, sorry, every once in a while I'm going to get distracted by admitting people from the waiting room, where we talk about issues that might be locally important to communities, or we just talk about the work that we're doing in the State House, which really takes up a lot of our time, particularly in the winter, from like January through, early spring, March or April. So we do some legal work, and that takes the shape of a number of different cases. Right now we have our senior staff attorney, Kim Ferraro. She works on a lot of different issues on the legal front. You can learn more about that on our webpage. And then we do some technical assistance. So if you have questions that are more technical in nature, you can go to our website, you can submit a comment form, and we will get back with you and let you know either if we can help you directly or guide you to people or organizations who can. And then we do advocacy, of course, and that's through grassroots and grass tops organizing. So whether it's, encouraging people to contact their legislators, or it's encouraging organizations to get more involved and letting them know what's happening. We try and just do that through a whole broad spectrum of actions that we take throughout the year. So of course, in the legislative session, it's very policy oriented at the state level, but it can take a whole host of other kind of personas, I suppose you could say, throughout the year, just depending on what issues have arisen and what we are working on at that time. I have a bit of a lag when I'm changing slides here, so give me a second. Okay, so I'm going to talk really quickly about how to get involved before I turn it over to Paula to talk about our EJ initiative. So if you are not familiar with our website, make sure you get acquainted with it. It's hecweb.org. Lots of great information on there. You can find all of the issues we work on. You can look at our Bill Watch page during session and things of that nature. We are on social media. The main ones, of course, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, to a lesser extent, YouTube. You can find all those links on our website as well. And again, I will share these slides and the links are active so that you can just click on these. Make sure you like us, follow us, and share our stuff. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paula to talk about her work with HEC. I'm going to stop my share so that she can then begin sharing hers. All right, Paula, take it away.
I'm here, Amanda, but I don't see where I'm sharing.
I wonder if I can just change it so that you're the host. Maybe that's going to be, I'm going to try that, and then you should be able to share your screen.
Yeah, it says it's disabled.
Okay, I've just made you the host.
Okay. But you have a file.
I do have the file, if that's easier, if you can't get your...
No, I want you to use what you had, Amanda.
Okay, all right, I will pull it up then. Maybe. There we go, share screen.
Do you have it?
Can you make me the host again? Sorry guys, technical difficulties. It happens, right? Julie's like, you know. If you hover over my video, Paula, and there's a thing that says mute, and then next to it there are 3 buttons. If you click on it, it should have an option to make me the host.
Well, I don't know. I'm not seeing an option on here to make you the host, Amanda. Well, I don't see an option on here, Amanda.
Yeah, because I can't share screen now because I'm not the host anymore.
Let me see if I can find you. I'm looking right at you.
Okay, and when you hover over me, you don't see anything that says, you don't see a mute and then the 3 buttons or the 3 dots?
I see that.
And if you click on the 3 dots?
Okay. I got you now.
Ah, awesome. Okay, good deal. And we're back in business. All right, so let me pull up Paula's slides. Pull up here. Come on. For some reason.
Is your screen frozen?
I don't know. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, and from beginning. All right, just let me know when to advance, Paula.
My name is Paula Brooks, as Amanda said, and I manage an environmental justice project here in Indianapolis, mainly in Center Township. So today I just want to kind of give an explanation of what environmental justice is, and also talk a little bit about a few of the projects that I'm working on. Okay, Amanda. Before I get started, I just would like to define 3 terms. The first term is environmental racism, and I believe we all know what racism is, and environmental racism is really just any environmental policy, practice, or directive that negatively affects whether, and this is what's really important, whether or not it's intentional or not, it's the effect individuals, groups, or communities based on race or color. Environmental equity, which is a very popular term, basically means that no one single group has an advantage over another group of people when dealing with environmental hazards or disasters. But environmental justice, a lot of times people will confuse environmental equity with environmental justice, but they're actually two distinct concepts. Environmental justice involves civic activism, and it also involves the protection of human right to a clean, healthy, and safe environment. And it involves advocating, civic activism again, but it's the advocating that's important when you talk about environmental justice. Environmental equity, again, is just really saying that no one group has an advantage over another. The environmental justice, next slide, Amanda. The environmental justice movement, it's a global social movement. It's a movement that's led by people of color. It's intergenerational. It's also a movement similar to Black Lives Matter, where it's decentralized. So there's no one head of environmental justice movement. So there's Robert Bullard, and his photos here. He's known as the father of environmental justice, and chiefly because he has done a copious amount of writing and research about environmental racism, environmental justice. He started Environmental Justice Institute at Atlanta University, and he's just an awesome teacher. So if you ever get a chance to hear him lecture, I would advise you to do that. I also would advise you to follow him on Twitter. And I believe he's on Facebook, but I know he's on Twitter. He's, again, just an awesome person. He's the father of environmental justice. Okay, Amanda, the next slide, please. The environmental justice movement, it was actually birthed during the civil rights movement. And again, the basis of environmental justice is that it prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, national origin. In 1996, Clinton actually signed the executive order 1294 that mandated that environmental justice had to be taken into consideration in any federal program. And today we see that in EPA programs, we see that in the Department of Transportation programs, we see it in housing as well. I can't really say that right now with the person that we have in the White House that the environmental justice offices are actually strong, but their offices are still in play. The policies are still in play. So we'll see what happens after November. Next slide, Amanda. In the United States, the environmental justice movement actually became popular in 1982 in North Carolina. There was a small town in Warren County that there was a PVC landfill that was planned for basically right across the road. And what made this important is that majority of these people in this Warren County, although they were low income, they were property owners. So this poisonous landfill was slated to be sited across the road from people's properties. And there was a lot of corruption going on with the deal, and people got upset. And then Ben Chavis, you can go to the next one, Amanda. Ben Chavis, at that time, he was head of the United Methodist Church, and he became the face of environmental justice. And what happened, even though the landfill was sited, the residents were able, because of their activism, to redefine what environmentalism was. It expanded it to include environment hazards on low-income communities or people of color. Next slide. It basically said that environmentalism is about where we work, live, play, and pray. So the movement prior basically focused on rural areas or conservation, but through this civic action in the early 80s, the environmental movement was expanded to include urban areas. Next one, Amanda. Now, the environmental justice framework is broad. It touches on pollution, outdoor air quality, pollution in terms of soil and water, toxic substance. And that's usually what people think about when they think about environmental justice. It's just polluting factories and buried chemicals. But again, the environmental justice framework is broader than that. It also includes homes and communities, safe homes, healthy homes, people, not having people live in homes that have mold or radon. Environmental justice also deals with infrastructure and transportation, and that's actually what I focus on a lot here in Marion County. And then also this last one, this global environmental health, I added this in a year ago. When I would talk about this, everybody's faces were blank, but not anymore because we have COVID. And so pandemics are really a key component of environmental health. And as we're living it today, you can see people who are of color, who are of lower income, are suffering the worst effects of the disease, carrying the heaviest burden. So again, when you think about environmental justice, just don't think about living next to a hazardous waste site. Environmental justice basically touches all aspects of our lives. Next one, Amanda, please. Now, environmental justice is also concerned with health disparities and public health. And so I wanted to kind of list some of the environmental health hazards. A lot of times people don't think of, for instance, having a job working at Amazon, for instance, where you have, it's a high demand, low control type of occupation. So the workers are subject to what we may not think of as a good, healthy work environment. For instance, sometimes with those warehouses, there's no air conditioning, or there's no heat, or there's only one bathroom for 1,000 people. I'm being a little facetious, but these types of things are environmental health hazard. It's a psychosocial one. You have one, again, with noise, so with vibrations, people who live in South Dakota, for instance, with the fracking, just that constant rumble and shaking of the earth, that's a health hazard. Some of the ones that we think about are like the bacterias and the parasites and the viruses. Another one that's a little controversial is the electromagnetic fields. So right now, 5G is being laid out all over statewide, and the science is inconclusive in terms of the harm of 5G transmissions. But if you ever go and read some of the sites that are talking about COVID, you'll see that one of the theories is that 5G is one of the causes of COVID. I'm not saying I believe that, but there is something to be said about living in an environment where there's all these invisible electromagnetic fields. Some people are more sensitive than others. Another one that is common that we think about are temperature extremes. If you live in a place and you do not have air conditioner, like today, you're going to suffer compared to someone who has air conditioner. And so, you know, with climate change, that temperature extremes, it can become deadly. I think about 5 or 6 years ago, hundreds of people died in Chicago who were living in older apartment buildings without air conditioning. So it's extreme temperatures are serious. And then the chemical ones are ones that we think about a lot, just air pollutants like diesel fumes, pesticides, lead, which is very common here in the state of Indiana. This last year, HEC was able to support and advocate and help a bill that got passed that will mandate lead testing in all of the schools. The problem is most visible here in Marion County and up in Lake County, but there's also issues in Fort Wayne and Kokomo. So that was a big, huge win for us last year. And lead is deadly. It stunts the growth of children. The next slide, please, Amanda. I just wanted to kind of show some of the risks and, I'm sorry, the real world impacts of environmental racism. So again, you know, just increased exposures, the being disproportionately burdened by negative environmental processes. For instance, living next to a highway. As we know, majority of the highways that were built 50 years ago went straight through low income and Black neighborhoods, and people were actually living right on the edge of the interstate and being exposed to the diesel fumes for years. It causes heart, kidney, and lung issues over time. One that's kind of dear to my heart in terms of environmental racism, it goes back to workplace where you have workers, and this is really relevant right now, where workers have to choose between hazardous jobs and environmental standards. So, you know, our essential workers that we have, especially the ones working in group homes, working in grocery stores, our first responders with the EMTs, all of these jobs are fairly low paid jobs. And policy in some states, not all states, but in a lot of states, the policymakers have mandated that these workers either have to go to work or they're going to starve and be homeless. That's environmental racism, because the people who are making these decisions are not the ones that are actually out there working. They're like us in our homes, self-isolating. And here in Indiana, there's lax enforcement of environmental laws. The goal is not to punish, the goal is compliance. So it may take 5 years from the time the state is notified about an environmental hazard that is dangerous to the population before anything's done. Or if it may not take that long, sometimes if it's apparent that it's a matter of life and death, what will happen is that that company, rather than face severe penalties, or maybe the managers who made these decisions, especially knowingly made these decisions, are punished, the companies just have a light fine. And depending on the doing a cost benefit, sometimes the company will just keep with this type of behavior because the profits are so high. That's environmental racism. And the last one that I just kind of want to talk a little bit about is just the inequality in environmental services in the built environment. And so, for instance, when you look at low-income neighborhoods, sometimes people think, oh, well, people in these neighborhoods, they don't care about their neighborhoods because there's litter, the streets have a lot of the road, rocks and stuff, and the grass may not be perfectly manicured. And so, you have a picture in your mind, oh, well, these people do not care about their environment. But when you really analyze it and you look at it, for instance, whose responsibility is it to keep the public streets clean? Is it a resident without any recourse, or a resident who, if they get hurt, the city will just say, I'm sorry, and keep it moving? We know how much healthcare costs. So, you have to kind of take those things into consideration. For those of you here in Indianapolis, I can give you a good example also. Around the highway on College, there's a lot of trees that are planted, and it looks good. A private citizen planted those trees. If you just come a little west or go a little east, rural, West Street, 21st Street, you notice how there's no trees and kind of how dirty the interchange is. That's a reflection of the fact that there's a big disparity in incomes. So in Indiana, and especially here in Indianapolis, the city and the state, they like to put some of the functions of a government onto the populace in the name of saving money. So that's one of my really big pet peeves. Okay, Amanda, you can go to the next one. And while she's doing that, I can give you an example also of just the storm sewers. When it rains hard, the water will puddle in certain places. And if you go and you look at the sewer, it's full of trash and all of that. So rather than devote money, and I'm sure in smaller towns, it's much easier, but here in Marion County, instead of devoting resources to keeping these sewers clean, the city asks the residents to go out and clean the sewers. And again, depending on your stage in life, that may be something that's easy to do, and it may not be something that's easy to do. But if you have money, you can always pay somebody to do it for you. So I just want to talk about what the core of environmental justice is, and its advocacy. It's really shining light. So I fight for the needs of my community, and what that really means is that I develop relationships with policymakers and decision makers, and actually, and then it's a trust relationship that's necessary. But once that's established, if most people can relate to certain situations. So, if you tell someone, I only have $100, and if I have to spend 90 on it, 90 of that $100 to keep my house warm, that's a problem. But if I got $1,000 and I'm spending 90, that's fine. So sometimes you just have to explain that to decision makers because they forget. And Also, with policymakers and decision makers, they really have to think about the greater good, and sometimes that greater good does not include people who are low income or of color. Other thing that I do with environmental justice is that I make sure the community members are able to voice issues, give voice to issues that are important to them. A lot of times people think that because certain people do not advocate for themselves is that they don't care, but that's not necessarily the case. A lot of times it's just that they don't know what to say or who to say what to. So that's part of environmental justice too, is just connecting the community members with policy and decision makers. And I talked about building trust, power, and equity. That goes both ways. You have to have trust with the community as well as with decision makers or policy makers. And for me, building that trust, I base that on integrity. I believe that being truthful and being honest, even when it's hard, and even when you've maybe made a mistake, people can accept that if you take responsibility. But if you just say no, 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 it's somebody else all the time, after a while, people will not trust you and you lose your power. And then the last thing, and I've touched on this in each of the three other core tenets of environmental justice, is organizing and connecting the work that I do with real policy change. And that's a difficult one. Real policy change, as we see, sometimes it really takes a big stick, as it has taken in the course of this police brutality issue. But when you have someone wielding that big stick, you still need someone else to be able to come in and translate demands into policy change. And that's part of the environmental justice as well. Amanda, you can go to the next one. So now I would like to just talk about my work here in Indianapolis. There's four main components of my work. And the first one is that I monitor a large groundwater contamination project that's going on here in Marion County. It's sited here close to downtown, basically from Washington Street to 35th Street to Central to Hope Road. And this cleanup is unique in the fact that the community had a huge voice. This Citizens Energy Group, who monitors, who takes care of our water, they had to notify the state that there was a high level of chemicals in the water due to the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act. And once they did that, it triggered some things. And one thing is that EPA came in, they did their investigation. The state also came in and did an investigation, and the state concluded, because of the cost of the cleanup, that they wanted to name this entire site, which was basically the majority of the northwest side of Indianapolis, as a Superfund site. Well, if you are a Superfund site, of course your property values are affected. It causes fear in the population. And in the neighborhood, Riverside, where the contamination was concentrated in. There were some leaders there that got together and worked with the community, communicated with community members, and came and told IDEM, which is the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, that they didn't want to be a Superfund site. The neighborhood was, after decades of disinvestment, was just poised to get this new investment. The property values were rising. So the state decided to partner with the city and citizens and manage the project, whereas EPA would not designate this area as a Superfund site. So for the past 3 years, IDEM has been doing an investigation. The investigation is about completed. Soon IDEM will announce the companies that they've been able to have agreements with. And also we were able to, I need to move back some because one of the volunteers is actually on this this presentation. We were able to get a $50,000 grant from IDEM that we plan to use to ascertain or to determine whether or not there's any vapor intrusion in any of the nearby homes. That is really interesting. The next slide, Amanda. The other thing that I work on is advocating with Indigo. And for those of you here in Marion County, and then I know in Lake County as well, there's a BRT, a bus rapid transportation system that's been implemented. Well, for here in Marion County, the decision was made to take service away from other routes to support this BRT, and it's become a problem for a lot of community members. So that's one of the major projects that I work on. Amanda, you can go to the next slide, please. In terms of the site 0153 cleanup, I think this slide got messed up, so you can go to the next one because I talked about that one, Amanda. Amanda, oh, okay. Oh, okay, so here are the neighborhoods that are listed for the site 0153 neighborhoods. And as you see, it's in the northwest section of the city. You can go to the next slide, Amanda. Okay, here's the Indigo. People like this gentleman here, and unfortunately he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was a big advocate, not only for the transportation plan here in Marion County, but also trying to make sure that he had the service that he needed. His name was Larry. He was a vet, to be able to go where he needed to go. You can go to the next slide, Amanda. Another issue with Indigo is that they had planned to change the system from a spoke and wheel system to a grid system where you would have transfers at strategic locations. But this decision was made without really taking into consideration the status of bus stops around town. So these photos here just give you an idea of the bus stops that Indigo had determined would be good transfer points, but they did not think about the fact that if you are mobility challenged, you really cannot access these bus stops. And fortunately, there's a new CEO, she'll be in her job a year in September, and she did put a stop to any changes until they can kind of analyze what's the best way to go forward. So I'm really happy about that. You can go to the next slide, Amanda. Another project that I'm working on is the reconstruction of the North Split. The North Split is located just right outside of downtown Indianapolis, and what it is 65 and 70 meet downtown Indianapolis, and then they split off. So you have a North Split and a South Split. But the North Split is going to be totally torn down and rebuilt. And for the past 2 years, there's been a public engagement and planning process. But one of the problems with the engagement is that NDOT has not really placed addressing some of the harm that the original interstate caused when it was built right through neighborhoods and separated neighborhoods. And we've been working on trying to change that. And actually right now we're engaging in a campaign where we're asking people who, especially people who are, you can go to the next slide, Amanda, especially people who use this underpass, this Commerce Avenue underpass, to reach out to the mayor and the city county councilors to ask them to put pressure on NDOT to include the upgrading of this underpass in the North Split reconstruction. And as you can see, the photo at the bottom, that's actually near Mass Avenue, and that's like the entertainment capital, Indianapolis, I would say. People from all of the donut counties will come for a night out on Mass Avenue. So about 3 or 4 years ago, NDOT did some critical repairs on some of the bridges, and one of the bridge was this bridge over Mass Avenue. So you see how beautiful it looks. It's bike lanes, wide sidewalks, nice stoplight, and then the photo above is the Commerce Avenue underpass, and NDOT so far has not included that underpass for any upgrades except for some lights. So this is an active campaign that we're working on right now. And if you need any more information, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to give you as much information as you want about this project. And this project is really an example of a concept called restorative justice, because the bridge actually went through a historic neighborhood, Martindale Brightwood, and it actually cut off Martindale Brightwood from the other Near East neighborhoods. And although the population is not what it was, the idea that we have an opportunity to at least improve on this connection, that's important. It's important in terms of just the recording of the history of the city in terms of equity and how it's concerned about neighborhoods, that lower income neighborhoods. You can go to the next one, Amanda. The last project that I kind of want to touch on that I'm working on is advocating for more equity in the planning and the maintenance of the publicly owned trees. Most people don't know, here in Indianapolis at least, majority of the trees that you see along the roadways, along streets, are actually owned by the city. They're in the public right-of-way, and the right-of-way is akin to an easement that the city has to be able to either widen the sidewalk or put in some kind of equipment or whatever they need to do. There's a public right-of-way that allows them to do that, but that right-of-way, the private owner maintains that right-of-way. So even the sidewalk in front of your house, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the city, but it's in the right-of-way, and the city expects for you to maintain that, to shovel it. Well, the mature trees, especially, they provide cooling, they purify the air, they help with stormwater runoff because the mature trees, the leaves and the bark, it can hold a lot of water. It buffers noise, and they're just beautiful. I don't know anyone who doesn't love a mature tree. Most of the focus on trees here in Marion County has been on planting new trees, but it takes 20 years for a new tree to show the benefit that a mature tree will has. So I've been working to get a consensus and to change some mindset where we can shift some of the funding that we're using planting new trees and maintain some of our mature trees. You can go to the next one, Amanda. And just for instance, a lot of the trees here in Indianapolis, they're unique. A lot of species are not planted anymore, but because of the lack of maintenance, a lot of them are sick. So in this photo, I'm just showing a huge, I'm sure this tree is about 100 years old, and just one of the branches got, the wind came through, knocked it down. You know, it's a loss for everyone. But the problem with this, when you talk about environmental justice as well, is who's gonna pay for removing that tree? The city here in Indianapolis will, if the tree blocks the sidewalk, then the forestry department will come and remove it. But if it's on your property, then that's your problem. But that tree doesn't belong to you. So again, it comes down to what you can afford. So on this other picture, I just like it because it just really shows you how unkept the publicly owned trees are here in Marion County. Amanda, you can go to the next one. So I just will kind of talk about what you can do today. The main thing is you can be an example. You know, you can make choices. You can make choices where you spend your money. You also can make choices in terms of how much time you spend on advocating. You can basically become familiar with not only your elected officials, but also the people who are making the decisions. And nowadays, a lot of the city departments are actively trying to engage the public, so they will come out. So if you can go to a meeting, and we really can't do that now because of COVID, but you can attend a virtual event. You can send an email and ask an example, ask a question. But the main thing is just kind of be an example, incorporate environmental justice elements in your work. And, you know, it could be as simple as asking for, to make sure the working conditions for the lowest paid employees are equitable. Something simple like that. It doesn't have to be, you know, you're out with a sign protesting. It could just be that building the trust relationships with decision makers, so you have some influence, make some decisions. You could maybe start recycling at your job. There's all kinds of things that you could do to bring in environmental justice elements in your work. It's important to mentor and educate and support young people. A lot of young people, and we've all been young, so we know the energy that you have and the idealism that you have, in your 20s, you do not have it in your 50s. But in your 50s, you have experience and you also know the history. So it's important to develop relationships with young people and share your knowledge with them so they can just take that with them and change the world as we all wanted to do when we were young and we thought we could do it. The last thing is that you should vote, vet, and advocate. So I know it's very popular to say, go vote, go vote, go vote. But especially on a local level, you need to vet the candidates. And you need to develop relationships with them in the beginning and not once they take office. And also, if there's an issue that's important to you, let them know that. A phone call, an email. A lot of times you think that hundreds of people are actually contacting their local officials, but that's not the case. It's usually the same people over and over again. So I try to, in my work, I try to encourage people to send in public comments on the issue, send in comments on zoning issues, especially because that really affects your neighborhood. I share information as well, and I just try to motivate and also encourage people to use their voice. And again, with environmental justice, advocacy is the key. Amanda, you can go to the next slide. It's thank you. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll try to answer them as best I can. I really appreciate your attention today. Thanks. You can take it, Amanda. Oh, thank you.
All right.
Richardson.
Thank you, Paula. So yeah, as Paula said, if you guys, right, like snaps for her, silent snaps and claps. If you guys have questions for Paula, she put her email up there and that will be included in the slides that I'll share in our Facebook event. And then you can also email me. And if you have questions and you're on Facebook and you want to just post things into the event, you can do that and I can relay those to Paula as well. And we could go that route too if that's just easier for you guys. So I'm not going to take too much more of your time. I do have just a few things that I wanted to wrap up with here. Paula actually covered a few things, so we'll be able to skip some stuff. The first thing I wanted to cover is for those of you who live in Marion County, we would love to encourage you to add your city county councilor to your contacts. So if you do not know who your city county councilor is, I have links down here. And again, I will share these with you so that it's easy for you to find. But if you go to indy.gov, you can also find the links that way. So if you go to this website, I'm actually going to follow it here. Hopefully this works. Give it a second. When this pops up, it will allow you to put in your address. And when I'm not going to actually share my actual address with y'all, but we'll do HEC's address here. And when you submit it, it will bring up basically all of your elected officials. So not just your local officials, but also federal and state level. For some reason, mine does not like to pull it up right away. So this is the voter information portal, and it will actually tell you your federal officials, your state officials, and then here, there we go. If you click on Indianapolis, Marion County, then you can see who your city county councilor is. If I actually lived at HEC's office, it would be John Barth. I don't, but you can actually see that here. So there's lots of really great information included on this that you can access. including down to the school board and township levels. Let's see. The other thing I wanted to make sure that you guys have is going a little bit up the scale, I guess, from local to state. If you don't know who your legislators are, you can go to bit.ly.com/inlegis and you can find your legislators there. But that link I just actually shared with you will have that information as well. The nice thing here is that it will also have links directly to your legislators. So if that's easier for you, you can do that. Paula's already talked about the importance of talking with elected officials, but also talking with their opponents in upcoming races. So it is super important to develop those relationships incredibly early. Let them know what you are concerned with, what your most pressing issues are, and get to know them as people, because they are people. And so the better your relationship with them, the more likely they are to listen to you. So, you know, be courteous when you're talking with them, even if you disagree on everything, right? Be personal whenever possible. When you're sharing your story, talking about why you care about an issue, you know, connect it in some real way so that they can kind of see your passion. And if you can be personal for them, that's even better. So if there's something you know that they are really concerned with, something that you know about them that maybe can help you connect that issue to them, that is very powerful as well. Know your material going in. So if you're talking about an environmental justice issue, I know that Paula would probably be happy to share materials about any of the EJ initiatives that HEC works on with you. So you can contact her, or you can contact me and I can put you in touch with her so that you have those at your disposal. And then the other thing is to follow up. So make sure once you've talked with your elected official or someone running for an elected office, that you follow up with them via email or some other way to let them know you appreciate their time. I'm actually gonna kind of skip over this a little bit. I just kind of was how to talk about EJ. I think Paula did a great job of talking about everything that we covered today. But this will all be there. I see that there are some chats coming in. Okay, most of them are just thanking Paula, which obviously you should. She did a fabulous job. So I'm going to skip this. It'll be in the slides, though. I know that we're doing this during a lunch hour. I added a bunch of EJ resources. Paula, you may have others that you want to include here. So if there is anything, I can touch base with you later. I just kind of went through things that I know that I've read before. So just basics of environmental justice from a variety of organizations, not just HEC, but also the NAACP, NRDC, and then of course the EPA. I had a couple interviews and articles that were really interesting that I've had the chance to read. And then there is a book list that I thought might be useful for people. Making sure the chat isn't. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So a reminder to read our emails, pay attention to social media, and to the HEC Bill Watch page for calls to action throughout the year. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns, my contact info is here. You know, keep an eye on our events calendar. Who knows when we'll be back to normal, but we're trying to do things virtually, and we will have more trainings coming up. So I hope to hear from all of you and see you in future trainings. I just got a question, are we automatically added to the email list by attending this? If I can see your name, then I will add you. It's easier if you email me at this email address, like right now, so that I have your email address at my disposal and I can add you. Make sure to include your full name if you don't mind, and also it would be useful other than that to have a phone number if you're okay with us contacting you, like, and letting us know whether you prefer a text or calls when we need help with volunteering. And the other really useful thing is to know where you live in Indiana, so even just a zip code, so that way we can identify your legislators and or city county councilors or just county councilors, depending on where you live. All of that is really useful information. So if you can include that in the email to me, that would be absolutely wonderful. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. If you guys have other questions, I'll hang out here for a few minutes. You're welcome to unchat to unmute or to post questions in chat. And thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Oh,
And thank you
thanks
for taking the
everyone.
lesson.
Thank you, guys.